Imagine being put behind a dog. This is what our clients experience all the time, that you have no rapport with, really. You're just learning together, and now you have to trust this animal to guide you down the street and you can't see anything. Like, that's a big challenge, right? And so I think it's a great way for trainers to learn to trust their dog, to train their dog well enough that they don't become reliant on them, and then to really empathize with clients that come in and get handed a new dog and they don't know, and to be patient with them and through their emotions, because I would describe guide dog training as gray, right? Because although you're teaching the dog the mechanics in the beginning, you really have to teach that dog to work very independently of the handler, and it's not always the same picture. In fact, the picture changes all the time. Like, you might have set routes, but people travel with their guide dogs, right? So you have to go to somewhere new, and you have to have taught that dog to generalize those concepts so well that it doesn't matter if you're in a brand new city. You tell them forward and they know what they're going to do, right? So that, to me, is the most fun part of guide dog training, is when you go from the trainer more towards like handler-like, and you use the environment to teach them. And you have to let their wheels spin, and you have to let them problem solve. And it's just, you go back and forth quite a bit from trainer to handler, until they start to really need you less and less as a trainer, and they can learn to problem solve those things on their own.
Welcome, everybody. So I'm Leanne Shinton from Automation Dogs, formerly known as Pet Biz Experts. And today we're going to be talking with Rebecca Golian from Love in the Lead. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hello, Leanne. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for joining us. You are an inspiration. I love seeing women entrepreneurs, and you are just kicking butt over there in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm so excited to learn from you what you've, accomplished with your life. You're so young and you've already accomplished so much. And I want to talk a little bit about that van life thing you were able to do.
Absolutely. So.
I do the RV life, so we're full-time in our RV, and so I can relate, but I think people would like to hear that and hear how you're able to kind of manage your business remotely. Mm-hmm. So first, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about your background and what led you to dogs.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a long journey. So I actually trained horses professionally before I got into dogs, which I know is not uncommon. So I trained in the sport of 3-day eventing, which is an equestrian sport. So yeah, dressage, show jumping, and cross country. So I was riding horses since I was 5, and I grew up with dogs. So I've always loved dogs. In high school, I started volunteering at local shelters, kind of just doing a bit more shadowing rehab cases. Obviously, a lot of rescue dogs have behavioral problems. So my first really introduction was, behavior modification and working with dogs and trying to get them rehomed, essentially. And then sort of in the latter part of high school and early into college, I actually shadowed some police and military dog trainers too. So Schutzhund was kind of a sport that they did at the time. So I have a bit of a background in that as well. And then in college, I was still riding professionally, but I kind of decided to shift a bit from horses to dogs full time. The horse industry is very challenging. It's very expensive. You travel a ton. It's hard to really have a work-life balance. And so I wanted to stick with animals, and my degree was in psychology and animal behavior. So I knew I wanted to work with animals in some capacity. And I had worked with dogs in college just as a part-time job too. So I just decided to kind of step away from horses full-time and made the shift into dogs full-time. I was actually in the Washington, D.C. area at the time. I went to the University of Maryland College Park. So I was working with dogs around that area. And then I actually moved to New York City in end of 2013, 2014. And then I kind of shadowed under some trainers there. I started taking on private clients, both for just pet dog training, right? Puppy training, obedience, off leash training. I did quite a bit of behavior modification there as well. In college, I actually raised German Shepherds for the Seeing Eye, which is the first guide dog school in the country. So I fell in love with guide dog training, and I used to go out to Mooresville and watch the trainers anytime I had, because that was right outside New York City. And I thought, man, what a cool thing to be able to do, to train a dog for somebody who's blind or visually impaired. So I, was on a wait list for a while. It's job opportunities to become licensed as a GDMI is what they call it, guide dog mobility instructor. They don't come open too often. So I applied to a couple schools, to one of the Seeing Eye and Guide Dogs for the Blind, which is out in California and Oregon. And they're kind of the leader in guide dog training, if you will. And so I ended up moving out west in 2015 to complete a 4-year apprenticeship program with Guide Dogs for the Blind.
Wow.
Yeah. So in that time, I was learning to train guide dogs. I was learning orientation mobility training to work with people who are visually impaired, to teach them how to travel independently. And my mentor at the time was also training other types of service dogs on the side. So I worked with her mobility dogs, autism assistance dogs, medical or seizure response dogs, things like that. So I was getting a wide variety of experience in training, not just with guide dogs, but with other types of service dogs. And I really fell in love with that. There's a lot more, it's more meticulous, pet obedience is sort of always sit down, come place, right? It's sort of all the basics.
Right.
And although we have a variety in the breeds and the temperaments of the dogs, the service dog training I really enjoy, because you have to be much more thoughtful and meticulous and positioning and back chaining and teaching dogs to think independently of the handler, which to me is just a higher level of training, which is more interesting. So even when I run the business today and all the nonprofit things that I do, I still work with the guide dogs, and I still oversee a lot of the service dog training for the nonprofit as well. But anyway, after I finished the apprenticeship, I moved back to the East Coast. I knew I wanted to start a business. I've always been entrepreneurial, even in horses. I ran my own company. And so I chose Charlotte because it was a newer city. It had an airport, public transit, all the things we need for the service dogs. It was close to my parents. Weather was nice. I didn't want to go back to New York. It was too cold. And I didn't go too far south because I don't love the heat either. So the Carolinas kind of seemed like a nice middle ground for me, and it was close to my family. And again, a new enough, big enough city that could support, a company, right, a business. So at the end of 2019, I moved back and started the company, just myself. I hired my first trainer in January of 2020. And now we have 15 on staff. In the last 4 years, we've grown exponentially. So we went from kind of a small sort of residential property where we, trained out of, and then we grew. We added a second facility, which was more of an open training space. And then we've kind of grown into the new facility where I am currently, which is over 11,000 square feet. And it's in a great part of Charlotte. So we have a lot of space here to train the dogs. We have shadow programs, internships, things like that. The nonprofit also comes here as well, and we offer them space here, and I assist with their training and the support of their program as well. So got a lot going on here in Charlotte now, and in the next few years, we are actually hoping to expand into a campus which we're building. I have about 25 acres on the other side of Charlotte that we're going to have, hopefully build kind of more of a inclusive campus. So a building for my company, a building for the nonprofit, having places where trainers can come in and shadow or have seminars, right? Fundraising events for the nonprofit. So that's hopefully in the next 3 years, we'll be kind of starting the construction process with that. But so it's been a wild ride in the last 4 years, but I've learned a lot, and I've built a great team here. Most of my staff have been with me from the beginning. So just trying to create a good culture around our company. And one of the unique things, I think, the way that I run the company is all of my staff are salaried. They have benefits. We support their continuing education, which is something you see more in the service dog realm. But in the pet dog industry, there's a lot of people, having to take board and trains out of their home, or they're contracted, right? And so I really wanted to create a business plan that allowed people to choose dog training as a career and not just kind of a side job. Right. So that's what I've envisioned for my company. And, we're building that today. So
are your parents very entrepreneurial?
They're actually not, but they're very, they both worked in policy for Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Energy. So they both, worked for the government. But no, I don't have immediate family that's been entrepreneurial. My uncle was a lawyer, and he ran his own private practice in Maryland. But outside of that, I'm sort of the only one in my immediate family that has branched off to do something a little bit more unique.
Yeah. And 3-day eventing, like scary stuff. It's maybe
I had some guts to do that, right? It's either that or like, my mom used to joke that I had to have something exciting. It was either, galloping a 1,200-pound animal or having a dog run and, bite me in a bite. So it's like, can you be normal with your life, please? So.
Yeah, for folks that don't know, the 3 disciplines in 3-day eventing, maybe you can break those down. I know that the show jumping and the cross country is super dangerous.
Yeah. The cross country being the most dangerous because essentially
Mhm.
you're just galloping an animal at fixed obstacles, right? And up and down terrain. And so you miss a step and there we go. And, they've gotten better with the sport over the years using things like breakable, frangible pins, right, on the jump so that if a horse gets caught up or something or missteps, we're not talking about major injuries, right? The fence will give a little bit, but not all of them are like that. And there
Yeah.
still are deaths in eventing. There are major injuries, riders getting head trauma, things like that from falls. So there's a reason we're galloping around in an air vest like
Oh,
motorcyclists,
yeah.
So it's a great sport, and it was really designed to test the athleticism of the horse for military, right? So they used to use 3-day eventing as a way to see, okay, is the horse brave enough? Are they rideable enough? Are they, do they listen to the rider? So dressage really tests the rideability of the horse. Do they respond to the aids correctly? Do they understand? Can the rider demonstrate proper control, right, and a partnership with the animal? And then, your cross country is obviously testing the bravery of the team, right, and the athleticism and the fitness. So working with horses, it's not just training the actual movements or the jumps, it's getting them physically fit enough too. So learning about how to prepare an animal for high level competition, all of the supplements and feed and, body work that we get done on the animals, similar to professional athletes. That's essentially what they are.
Oh, yeah.
So the cross country portion, focuses on that. And then the show jumping on the third day, after the horse has done all those things, they still have to come back and be able to jump clean and not knock the poles down in show jumping, which again speaks to the fitness. It speaks to the rideability of the horse, right? Because they're very tired on the third day. And so, it's a test of whether, the riders have prepared the horses well enough to finish out the event, right? So that's kind
Yeah.
of a little bit of the history and background of 3-day eventing.
Yeah. I was at Rolex, I
Yeah,
don't remember, like
Kentucky.
15,
Yeah.
15
Beautiful
years
event.
ago.
Mhm.
And there was, a situation where I think it was like a basket where there was
Yeah.
over the head of the horse. So they
Right.
have to jump, but then
Through
there's
it.
something over their head
Mhm.
and he tumbled and it
Yeah, and
was,
they've started to get rid of those because again, like, we have to look at the safety of the animal first. And a lot of these horses, they love to do it. We can't force them to do
yeah,
it. If they didn't want to be there, they wouldn't. They would refuse the jumps. They would quit. Like they're not going to do it. But we don't want to take advantage of their love for the sport and putting them in situations. They are inherently flight animals or prey
mm,
animals. So that's the biggest difference between dogs and horses, right? Horses are prey, dogs are predators. So the way that they handle pressure, the way that they handle situations that might make them a little uncomfortable is completely different. So yes, the sport has started to get rid of things that they feel is too dangerous or asking too much of the animal.
good. Yeah. When, this one girl was riding, the horse fell and her mom would run behind trying to keep up,
Yeah.
and she was such a big part of her daughter's, career. And then the helicopters came and took her and
Yeah.
it was horrible. So, and I just mentioned that because it 3-day eventers, cross country, you guys got guts.
Yeah.
You're a risk taker. You probably have like a Harley Davidson in your garage or something.
Yeah. Well, that's maybe why I was gravitated to working, early in my training with, more powerful dogs, right? Malinois,
Mm,
Dutchy Shepherds in sport work, bite sports, right? And then, of course, a lot of the rescue dogs. I've worked with a lot of human aggression, a lot of dog aggression, right? And with horses, you have to be so aware of your energy. Your breathing, how they're so sensitive to those things that you learn to be very much in control of your emotions. And I think that's something that I try to instill in my trainers, right? I always have my philosophy here is if you are ever caught correcting a dog or punishing a dog out of frustration, you won't have a job here, right? Like you can correct
yeah.
effectively without getting emotional and making it a personal issue with the dog, right? So to me, people who have worked with horses know like you can't just get physical with an animal, right, and start wailing on 1,200 pounds, you're going to lose that battle, right? And then they're not going to trust you. So good luck the next day. Dogs are, in my opinion, most of them are much more forgiving than horses are, right? So you have to learn how to have better self-control over your emotional state to work with horses, especially competition level horses where they're bred to be very sensitive, right? Like we've all been on the trail horse at the carnival, right? Where you could like kick it a million times. It's not going anywhere. We're not talking about those type of horses. We're talking about performance level horses that are bred to be very, very sensitive and so that we can train them to do high level things. So to me, that's carried over into my career with dogs of being very patient and understanding how to use different forms of training without it being, ever an emotional thing. If I have to say no to a dog, it's just, sorry, buddy, you can't do that, right? It doesn't have to be in your face and personal. We don't need to get frustrated at the animal, right? So that's definitely something. If you come here and watch all of our trainers train, whether it's a dog aggressive dog, a human aggressive dog, a fearful dog, a happy-go-lucky golden doodle, whatever it is, they're all going to get that same respect from the trainers.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were in university, what did you study?
So psychology, and then I had a minor in animal behavior.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go to vet school. So I originally was like, I'm going to go pre-vet, right? I'm going to go to vet school. And like many people, I had to take organic chemistry and was like, nope. So I didn't want to, they're very, very focused on, at that point, I'm not sure if it's like that anymore, but when I went to college, they were very focused on, you have to have the grades, you have to do well in all of these sciences. And I did okay, but it was frustrating to see people who were very good students, but they'd never handled animals before. So to me, I would rather a vet that knows their stuff, but can handle my horse or my dog in a better way. And so I got a little bit turned off by that sort of attitude around the vet industry. And so I switched from pre-vet to psychology, right? And that was my focus. And I've always loved to teach. I love to interact with my clients, our donors, our supporters, our volunteers on the nonprofit side. So I like that part of the business as well. I always joke that when trainers come interview with us, whether it's for a job or an internship or whatever, one of the first questions I ask them is, do you like people? Like, how do you feel about people? Because to me, a lot of dog trainers get into dog training because, and horse people are guilty of this too, right? But they don't like people. And I'm like, well, who do you think is going to pay the bills? And who do you think is going to refer you clients? And who do you think is going to be responsible for that dog's success long term? It's going to be the owner. So if we don't do our job as trainers to train the owner, then what are we doing? It's a waste of time. I don't care what I can do with the dog. I care what the owners can do with the dog at the end of the program. So that's something that, that psychology background and my interest in teaching and my interest in human behavior, right, and how people learn and we are much more emotional creatures than dogs. So if you understand that aspect of it, I think you can be very successful as a dog trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an amazing background. And taking psychology too, just a perfect fit. Mm-hmm. I know for me, when I, was young, I was like, oh my God, dogs. And I had to learn all the breeds dogs were so cool. They're so beautiful. I wanted dogs and to be around dogs and oh my gosh, dogs. But then there was this shift. I went to the dog trainer school, went to National Canine and everything. And I was still dogs, dogs, dogs. But then later down the road, I really got a kick out of helping a family with the dog. And it evolved, but it took some time because I realized I knew I was there for the people, but I didn't see that as like my big why.
Until you're in it. Yeah. Well, and it's even more so with service dogs, right? So we have to work with people who have mental or physical disabilities. So not only do we have to teach them how to utilize a service dog, but, we're battling a lot of a baggage typically, whether it's, just a mental health condition or whether they're physically, disabled. And so they have a learning disability. So you really have to develop a lot of patience. You have to develop the ability to read somebody and understand, okay, is this moving in the right direction or is this bond working? Right. So on the service dog side too, it's even more so that you have to be comfortable working with a variety of people that may have a variety of conditions that make it harder for them to work with a dog or to bond with a dog, right? And so that's a whole nother side of it that obviously I have quite a passion for the human side as well. And so that's probably what drew me to guide dogs and service dogs. So.
Yeah. And so Love in the Lead, is that the obedience pet dog training side? And then you have
The nonprofit.
uh,
Yeah,
the
I'll
nonprofit.
explain the breakdown, and we have to keep it
Yeah.
very separate, obviously, for, tax purposes and legal purposes. But essentially, Love on the Lead was founded. We do puppy training, board and train programs for adults. And then we have a pretty large therapy and service dog program. But yes, that's all for profit and primarily pet related, other than the service dog side. The service dog program is a bit unique because we have private clients that come to us and need a dog trained specifically for them, or maybe they need a hyperallergenic dog or a dual trained service dog, meaning they need the dog to do multiple things. Whereas oftentimes, if you go to a nonprofit school, well, one, there's usually quite a long wait because they're, funding the dog essentially for you, but they only train one type. So if I have a client that, well, I need a guide dog and mobility dog, or I need a medical response dog and I have autism, or whatever it is. So people come to us if they don't really fit the mold for traditional nonprofit schools, or they want to do their own fundraising because they don't want to wait 4 years to get a dog, right? So those are the kind of clients that we receive that are all over the states. I would say probably heavy in the Southeast just because we're more local, but we have teams all over the US and a few in Canada as well. And then, in addition to the private service dog training program, we also partner with a couple large nonprofit service dog programs. So people like the organization like Canines for Warriors down in Florida, they're the largest veteran-based service dog organization in the country. And they receive a good number of dogs from us, fully trained service dogs from us each year for their program. So we also have contracts with these larger schools where we're producing dogs for their programs as well as our private clients. And then the unique thing about the guide dog training is most GDMIs work at a school. So it's very rare to find a licensed guide dog trainer that's not affiliated and working full time as an employee for a school. But there are some smaller schools that contract out licensed GDMI. So I have a couple of partnerships with some accredited guide dog programs here in the States and one overseas, where they send me a dog essentially once it's through puppy raising. So they're usually a year and a half. They've done all their health clearances. Hey, this dog's ready for formal harness training is what we call it. And then they're with me for about 4 months to learn how to essentially become a guide dog. So we have a couple partners here in the States, and then I also train for blind low vision in New Zealand. So every once in a while I get to go to New Zealand, which is a perk.
Wow. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've trained hundreds of guide dog teams, I assume.
Yes. Well, yes. As part of your apprenticeship, you might have a string of 4 or 5. You have 4 strings a year, plus you're training other dogs like along the way. And so you're doing follow-up support services for dogs or refresher training on dogs. So yeah, by the time you get a license, you've had your hands on hundreds of dogs, which is really important because obviously if you're going out and preparing a dog for someone who's visually impaired, this is a life or death situation. You need to really know what you're doing. Otherwise that person could be put in a very, very bad situation. So
yeah. Yeah. It's amazing what dogs can do and how they can help us, how they can use their nose to find somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share a client story that's really stuck with you?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I think what's really unique, and I've had a few clients that they're first time guide dog users, meaning this is their first dog they've ever had. Some are newly blind, some maybe have had, a degenerative eye disorder since they were younger. So they've progressively gotten, had less and less vision. But I think there's a client of mine that stands out from my work out west, and it was their first time going from a white cane to a guide dog. And the mode of travel is very different. So, with a white cane, it's essentially tactile feedback. So they use the white cane to find things in the environment to avoid them. A guide dog is literally trained the opposite way. They're trained to avoid things in the environment and show you maybe changes in elevations or total barricades or something. But they're much faster, right? It's a much faster mode of transportation for them or mobility because they're not running into every little crack on the sidewalk and having to investigate it before they move forward. So most people, if they like dogs and they want to travel faster, a guide dog is a better option for them. But this was a situation where the person was in a very tragic car accident and they lost their vision from the car accident. So a TBI essentially that caused the vision loss. And this was a pretty high powered, person in a very high, high powered position. always sort of was progressing steadily in their career, and just all of a sudden to lose everything like that is extremely challenging and obviously emotional. And so it took them a while to they traveled by cane for a bit, and it took them a while to wrap their head around the idea of needing a dog, right? Because it's a very weird feeling to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put my life in the hands of a dog like that, for someone who's, they weren't really a dog person anyway. So it was like, that was something they really had to overcome. But I remember working with them, and they would break down almost every route. For the first week, they just stop and start crying, and not it just because they were still dealing with the tragedy of losing their vision. But to see the team at the end of that second or third week of their training together, and how much they had bonded with the dog, and how much I could see how their life was being enhanced by that, and just hearing them talk about, oh, I could do this again, and maybe I can go do this again. And like, I am not a very emotional person myself, but man, at the graduation, when he would, because we get the puppy raisers up on the stage, and he comes up and tells us the story and is thanking us, and everybody's in tears, and it's just, yeah, right. Like it's really amazing to see what a dog, just a regular old lab, just can do for somebody. And he has lived, I always still get notes and pictures from them, and how much that dog has changed his life, and going from being suicidal and losing your family and your whole career to now you feel like you're alive again, and that's the stuff that makes all of the hard work that I have to do worth it. Because at the end of the day, not only do I love my team of trainers and my community here, and I love that I can give people a fulfilling career, but all of the people that we're helping have a better relationship with their dog, whether it's a puppy or, a regular pet dog down the street, or someone like this, right, who has their whole life has been altered, right? And then now we have a dog that can step in and essentially pull them out of a very dark place. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Getting a little choked up on that one.
Yeah.
And I can tell you're, more like clinically minded and smart. And like you just said, I'm not that emotional. You're very strong.
Yeah.
That probably helps.
Oh my gosh. I always tell people always ask us all the time, especially with the service dogs we spend so much time with. And it's like, how do you give them up? Like, how do you? And it's like, well, you do have to. And this is something I talk to my trainers about all the time. You do have to put a little bit of a lens over that. Mm-hmm. You do have to protect yourself a little bit, because otherwise, I mean, imagine you just get ripped open time after time. This dog's leaving you, and it's just same thing with puppy raising. We have these volunteers that take these dogs from 8 weeks to a year, and they raise them and socialize them and prepare them for service work. And then they just get plucked from the family, right? And it's for a good cause, right? But It's still emotional. And there are a lot of people who, do it once, and I'm like, I can never do it again, because it's too hard for them to give up, a dog that they've bonded with. So for me, yeah, especially with the guide dogs, because it's just one of my most favorite types of work. And I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into those dogs, a lot of miles on my body to get them prepared. And oftentimes they live with me during part of their program. And so those are the hardest for me, because you do build such a connection. And really, the reality is, at the end of their training, I put a blindfold on and I say forward, and they take me downtown Charlotte and they work me on public transit. Like, I have a route that I have to do. That's their final test. And we have videos of this. Every dog that before they graduate has to do a final blindfold test. So the trainer has to demonstrate that, they've trained the dog to not need any handler cues other than directionals, right? And that they are not helping the dog through the harness or, through being, having vision. So you really have to, as you're training these dogs, you have to go from trainer mode to like slowly start to be more client-like and slowly start to be, more visually impaired, if you will, in how you respond to the environment. So by the time that you're doing a final blindfold test, you have 100% trust in that dog, and they trust you, and they're not going to run you into anything or go out into the intersection if there's a right turning vehicle. Like, you've trained them to understand intelligent disobedience. You've trained them to understand the responsibility of that job. And so those dogs for sure are the hardest for me to let go because it is such a deeper connection than I would have with, a board and train that I love them, but I have them for 3 weeks and good boy, now you know all your commands and you get to go back to your family. That's a much different type of training. And I would imagine it's the same for people who use canines, right? Police, military, their lives are, they're relying on this dog for a lot of things. And so the connection is just a little bit deeper.
You brought me back to when I was like 17 and I got to experience putting the blindfold on, and I was a boxer. And, just can you share a little bit about what that experience is like for folks that have never, just put that trust and put that blindfold on? And
yeah. So, and one of the things that we do as part of an apprenticeship program when we're teaching trainers to be guide dog mobility instructors is you do blindfold work, you do your own white cane work to get familiar with the tools and to get familiar with what it feels like to not have as much proprioception, right? And to not really know where you are in space and how to get yourself out of position if you do get lost in space, so to speak, and so that you can relate and can coach your clients better. So as part of my apprenticeship program, we did blindfold work, but we also did these, they had these goggles where we would simulate different eye disorders. And I almost found that some of them where you could only perceive certain things or you didn't have depth perception or you can only see half, like that was more challenging because if you have any vision, your brain always wants to take over and it turns off the other senses automatically. So it was almost easier to be completely blindfolded because I had to rely on the dog and I had to use my other senses, like feeling a building line end, right? And getting used to sensing what's around me instead of always relying on my vision. And so I think that was obviously a very challenging and unique experience, and it helped me relate to the clients better. But I think I did okay under blindfold for the most part. There are some trainers that really struggle and they are all over the place. And so you have to know yourself as a trainer and go, well, if I'm not a very good, handler under blindfold, I've got to do all those things when I'm sighted working the dog to prepare my dog. Or if we know the dog's going to go to someone with a gait abnormality, we know we have to simulate that. So it is nerve-wracking when you first do it, for sure. Like the first year that you are training and the first time you've been under blindfold, whether you have a cane or a dog, is unnerving. And then as you get better, obviously you're better under blindfold. You can sense things better. You can feel the dog make turns a little bit better. You have more trust in them. Actually, one of the major tests as a guide dog mobility instructor at your large programs is they hand you a dog you don't know. It's fully trained, but you didn't train it. You don't know it. They put a blindfold on you. They drive you. You're blindfolded the whole time. They drive you into downtown Portland or San Francisco, depending on which campus you're on. And they drop you off somewhere you don't know. They drop you off somewhere in the city and they say, find this restaurant or find this destination. This is your final test. And it gives you a lot of perspective of what people who travel that are visually impaired experience. People that don't know their area, they get dropped off somewhere and they have to navigate. And oftentimes you're relying on people. So I'm like, all right, well, forward, here we go. And I might hear somebody and say, excuse me, can you tell me what street I'm on? Can you tell me what's to my right and left? And can you point, can you tell me where this is? Oh, it's over there. It's like, oh, sir, I can't see, right? Or I can't see. Oh, sorry, right. Okay, go straight, make a left, right? So you learn how to use the public, right, and your surroundings to try to navigate. But it's still, imagine being put behind a dog. This is what our clients experience all the time, that you have no rapport with, really. You have, you're just learning together. And now you have to trust this animal to guide you down the street and you can't see anything. Like that's a big challenge, right? And so I think it's a great way for trainers to learn to trust their dog, to train their dog well enough that they don't become reliant on them. And then to really empathize with clients that come in and get handed a new dog and they don't know, and to be patient with them and through their emotions because you've experienced that and you know how nerve-wracking and intimidating that is. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Nerve-wracking is the best in a short sentence. Nerve-wracking is the word I would describe that experience, and then it does get better as you get more experience with that, right?
Yeah, coming back to 3-day eventing cross country and how much grit and guts that takes.
Yeah.
People, I think, might look at service dog work, guide dog work is like, oh, that's cute and sweet and joyous and wonderful. But what you just described is
Yeah.
freaking
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
So I could see
Yeah.
where, you coming
Well,
from the 3-day eventing to this is like,
well, and
you know,
then
your
exactly. And I
jam.
get asked all the time from trainers and really high level trainers. People are out there doing high levels in protection sports and things like that. And they're just like, how the heck do you train a guide dog? Like, it's such a foreign thing for most
Yeah.
people, and you don't hear about it a lot. And like, most obedience and even high performance obedience, like it's all patterns, right? A lot of it's just teaching specific patterns and teaching them to generalize that in specific settings, right? But with a guy, and so the training to me is more black and white. The same with the pet obedience, very black and white. I would describe guide dog training as gray, right? Because although you're teaching the dog the mechanics in the beginning, you really have to teach that dog to work very independently of the handler. And it's not always the same picture. In fact, the picture changes all the time. Like, you might have set routes, but people travel with their guide dogs, right? So you have to go to somewhere new, and you have to have taught that dog to generalize those concepts so well that it doesn't matter if you're in a brand new city. You tell them forward and they know what they're going to do, right? So that to me is the most fun part of guide dog training, is when you go from the trainer more towards like handler like, and you use the environment to teach them, and you have to let their wheels spin and you have to let them problem solve. And it's just, you go back and forth quite a bit from trainer to handler until they start to really need you less and less as a trainer, and they can learn to problem solve those things on their own. But when we're talking about an animal that has, the intelligence of an elementary school age child, and what they're doing is pretty phenomenal. I'm always amazed at all my dogs that I get in for that kind of work. So
Yeah, that's magic. That's amazing. Tell me a little bit about some of the things you do with your team, like your
Mhm.
trainers, your volunteers, your interns, some of the team meetings and things like that that may help other dog trainers that have, they're just starting to hire,
Mhm,
or
mhm.
they have a small team and they might be missing, something cool that they could add to help their team and help their business.
Yeah, I think to me, I think putting in individual time with each staff is important. And that's something that I've always made sure when I hire trainers that, like, I either train them myself or I've got a senior trainer who works with them, but I also am part of the process, like building rapport with your teammates and your staff, so that you're not just like the boss, but there's someone that they can trust. There's someone that they can come to if they're unsure about something. Like, at the end of the day, we all have to hold each other accountable. And at the end of the day, I'm still their boss, but I would say that you could ask any one of my staff members here, and they would say that they could come to me for just about anything, not even job related, right? So building a healthy working relationship, but also feeling like you're building rapport with them, just like you would a dog, right? And so it's like it's important to have that connection to me, and
Mm,
obviously, like, doing your best to compensate people the best that you can, offering benefits, things that make them feel valued, because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to nickel and dime my staff. I'm trying to give them as much as I can and show them how much I value them, whether it's a salary or time off or flexibility in their schedule, or, if you've earned that with me in the company, that I'm more than willing to give that. So I do think it is a just having a very healthy respect for your staff, and not making them feel like they're replaceable, or they're just, oh, you just make me money. Like, I don't want to hear about anything else. Like, just go do your job, right? Very dismissive and sort of that can, or talking down to them. Like, I'm intimidating to a lot of my staff because of my background and knowledge, but over the years they've learned to like be okay. I can come watch them train, and they know that I would never say anything that would make them feel like shit, if I can say that on the podcast, sorry.
yeah.
But like, essentially, there's a way to give constructive criticism to people, and there's a way to say, to be a little tougher on them without degrading them. And that's something that I see a lot in dog training, is that trainers are very rude. They're very rude to their staff. They're very rude to clients even. Oh man, I have so many stories of people that have, signed up for training with us and would tell me about an experience they had with another local trainer, or the things that were said to them. And it just, customer service and treating people decent is all we're asking, is all you need to do, right? I think for us, things like team building exercises are important. Team dinners, going out to do something together that's not work related, is really great to build interpersonal relationships and help people connect outside of work, which is oftentimes a busy and stressful environment. Everybody's going and doing their own thing. And sometimes we forget that we're all just people and we've got our own stuff going on outside of work. And so those opportunities help staff connect and see each other as peers and not just, oh, that's just my coworker, right? So team building things are great. We do kind of like weekly team meetings and things. We're actually investing in a different kind of like communication, like a group me kind of texting app, right? Where everybody can kind of just make sure stuff doesn't get slipped through the cracks, right? Just having really good communication protocols in place. Your staff should never wonder what they should be doing. They should never wonder what the checklist is at the end of the day. They should, you have to kind of put those pieces together. That's the foundation. So I think a lot of people grow a business or they add trainers and they don't have a foundation, or it's a rocky one. And then as you start to build, you're always going to have growing pains, right? But if your foundation is solid, it helps the growth process, right? So for me, just, streamlining things, whether it's getting your CRM right or going digital with all my things very early in my business, starting things like team dinners or team building exercises with my team, making sure that I meet with my staff. I have individual staff meetings at the end of each training cycle. So everybody gets a chance to meet with me one-on-one. How'd it go, right? How you feeling? Like, what, is your schedule okay? What are your thoughts for next string? Like just an opportunity to connect with them, in addition to our group kind of all staff meetings, right? So really communication is key, and making sure that your staff feel like they have an outlet if something's not going well, or they don't feel supported, or they're having a interpersonal relationship with another staff member, that yourself or another manager or somebody that can support you as the owner is available to them, because I feel like that's been what saved us as we've grown and got bigger and bigger and have now added the nonprofit. So we've got staff and volunteers, and there's a lot of moving parts, right? And so trying to make sure that communication is in place, to me, would probably be my biggest recommendation for growing trainers that are starting to, hire people, for their own company.
So maybe something that trainers could start thinking about is like a inexpensive group dinner with your team. Definitely around the holidays, having something, a little mixer.
Yeah, we have a little holiday party every year, and absolutely. Yeah, just things that, make building, to me, building what I would consider more of a family. I know people who have businesses that are 3 times my size, and they still have that culture. And I think that's really important, especially because this is such a personal type of job, right? We're interacting with animals every day. We're interacting with their owners every day. So I always joke that dog trainers are like, oh, they train animals, they train people, they put our therapist, right? We do all these things. And so to me, you're going to attract a type of person that needs to feel connected at their workplace, right? So that to me is probably, would be my biggest. I think that's something that I feel like has made the biggest impact on my team.
Yeah, I was talking to a trainer the other day, and he rented a pontoon, no dogs, which would suck because I would want to bring my dog to let her swim, and we love pontoons. But yeah, he had all his staff go out and enjoy the pontoon.
Nice.
Just a good team building day where they could just unplug a little bit.
Do a retreat or something like that. Again, it doesn't have to be super expensive or fancy. It's the thought behind it that I think they all appreciate. And so I absolutely would recommend that to any team.
Excellent advice. Can you talk a little bit about van life? Because I think you said that you went on the road and you still were able to use your laptop and do some phone consults and things like that. And that's the hard part for us entrepreneurs, is we're working in our business, not on our business.
Yes.
And we can't leave for a week, let alone, I think you said you left for a year.
Yeah, I was in and out, but gone a lot for over a year. And some of that was because of the current location, the location that we were at last time. We didn't have offices like we have here. So basically it was like a big open training space, and we had outside areas for them to run and things, but I couldn't do my job to run the business. I needed a quiet office. So I work from home a lot. And then because I was working from home, I was like, well, I always wanted to get a van and I wanted to do some travel. And so it was a time in the business where we were kind of, we were in a good place. We were doing everything we need to do. We were sort of waiting on whether we were going to build at the new facility or build the new facility or come to a different place here. We ended up coming here to give us a little bit more time. But that was the reason. We weren't really trying to grow too much at that point. We're just trying to figure out what our next move was in terms of location. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, everything's going well. I have a good assistant manager. Like, I'm working from home a lot anyway. So why don't I hit the road and travel a little bit and work from the road? So I purchased a Ford Transit 250 high roof. And then I had it converted through Drifter Vans, which is in Michigan. Highly recommend. They're a great team of guys. They do wonderful work, but they're also great if you ever have a problem. They stand by their work. So there are a lot of van conversion companies out there. And I chose Drifter because of their reputation in the industry. And they do custom van builds. So you can have certain models, but then basically you get to pick everything else and customize it and design it. And so the van went up there, and it took them a few months to build it out, but it's very much an off-grid vehicle. So would be considered Class B, right? So fully contained camper van. And I've got a shower, I've got a kitchen, I've got a bed, a little dining area, and I've got solar. I've got an outdoor shower in the back. We call it a garage, but it's a storage area underneath the bed in the back. But it's completely off grid. Like, if I can charge it via solar, it charges it when it drives. I've got the lithium batteries in the back that charge the main house of the vehicle. So I've got hot and cold water. So to me, I was like, this is cool. I can live out of this, just myself and my one dog at the time. And we just kind of hit the road and traveled all over. I went out west and, traveled down south and sometimes I would do placements too. So we have whether it was a service dog, or we have our program called Little Prodigy Program, which is essentially where we source a puppy, raise it and train it all the way through about 8 months, do all the advanced obedience, and then deliver it to their new family. So it's for people who want a really nice, well-bred dog, very trained. They just don't want to go through the puppy stage. And so they'll go through our Little Prodigies program. So I oftentimes deliver those dogs and spend 3 days in that area working with the new family with the dog. And so it was a way for me to also help do some service dog placements and place some prodigies, but also get to be on the road and travel a little bit too. So it was definitely fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what are some of the places that, stood out, like your top 1 or 2 places?
Yeah, I would say, I love the West, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico. Like, I love to hike. I love the outdoors. So, and it's actually it's much easier to travel in a camper or be a little bit of a nomad out west because they have a lot of BLM land and areas where you can just kind of pull off and park for the night. It's very hard to do that on the East Coast. So unless you want to stay in a Walmart parking lot or an RV place, it's hard. Sometimes you can find like cool harvest hosts, like vineyards or distilleries or something to stay at, but you don't have the recreational or the vast openness that's out west still. So basically, any like Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, I love to ski. So in the wintertime, I usually do ski Santa Fe or Taos, and then I go up to Breckenridge area and Aspen and Vail. And so I'll do like a kind of a Colorado, New Mexico trip each year with the van. And
nice.
Yeah, now a lot of the ski resorts will let the van lifers, they're a little more lax on the West Coast. So they'll let you just park, a lot of them will just let you park in the parking lot overnight. So, we get it's really fun to meet people because people come from all over, different people that are living van life, some of them full-time, some of them just part-time. So I love the West. I love the Keys. I love the Caribbean. So I just spent some time down in Key West and the Gulf. So in the winter times, if I wanted to escape the cold weather, I'd go down there. And the fall, I have some family up in kind of the Northeast and even in New England area. So the fall time's great. I love to go up there to see the foliage in the fall. So those are kind of my areas. I lived out on the West Coast for so long that I feel like, and I've hiked literally the entire Pacific Northwest. So I'm pretty familiar with that area. I always joke that I would never go out unless it's summertime because it's just rainy and cloudy and dark the rest of the year. But I didn't really feel the need to drive all the way out there because I just spent so many years out there. So I really spent more time in sort of, the Midwest area there, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, and then down south for sure in the Keys. So.
Yeah, for us, Yellowstone, top of the list.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but we went all over the East Coast and everything, and we're back on the West. We're in Arizona now, and
Okay.
we've done so much driving that we're like, wait a minute, we could stay in Arizona for the summer, be up in Flagstaff, and
Yeah.
it's like 68 degrees.
Yep.
And then fall, maybe Prescott, winter, maybe Havasu or
Yeah, a little
Scottsdale or
bit farther
something.
south.
And we
Yep.
only have to drive like 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours because
Yeah.
we've been
Yeah.
traveling all over.
That's cool. Yeah.
Um, okay, so lightning round. I wanted to ask you kind of some different questions. So, if you, let me see what I've got here. If your personality was a dog breed, what breed would you be?
Probably a pit bull. I'm
Okay.
stubborn and tenacious. You tell me no, I'm gonna find a way. So yeah, I have a lot of energy. Some of that's just my personality. Some of it's like I'm into fitness. I go to the gym, so it's like I try to keep myself balanced with all the stress that comes with work. But I love a good pity. I love this. Probably one of my favorite dogs to train. I own one myself, so yeah, probably that. They never give up. They're pretty strong. Pretty strong dogs, and but they also love to play and explore. And I'm the same. Yep.
Yeah, and what you just said there too about like balancing like your work-life balance, and it's very stressful. It takes grit. Um, you know, I think going to the gym, going out in nature, it seems like
Mhm.
that is definitely something that's part of your life.
Oh yeah. Even every day, like I'll take my dogs at the end of my day. I'll take them to like a nature preserve or a nice big open park out of the city, right? Just quiet. Like there's nothing better to me than starting and finishing my day with peace and quiet it could be a 20-minute hike. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. My dogs love it. They get to go out. They're obviously off leash trained, so no one's out in the early morning or late night, and so we have basically it all to ourselves. And it's my form of meditation. It's not really a traditional form of meditation, but to me, when I open the door to this facility, from the time I'm here to the time I leave, um, it's just go, 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 right? And I
Mm.
love interacting with my staff. I love doing things like this. I take phone calls. I'm in meetings. Like I'm problem solving a dog with a staff member. I'm working the guide dog. Like there's so much stuff going on. I'm constantly putting out fires all the time too, right? So as an owner, it's like, okay, we got to do this and this and this. Dealing with my managers, communicating with them, and so man, by the time I get done for the day, it's important for me to unwind. And I've gotten really strict with myself, and I make sure my staff are aware of this. They don't ever give out their personal number to clients. They don't, all the communication with clients comes through our company email. They don't email them. I don't want clients bothering them and texting their personal line. Communication comes through us, and my assistant and myself. But when 6 p.m. rolls around, like in your system is great. Like this year, I'm like the automated fires. Like we're out of the office. Sorry, please, you can book here, or we'll give you a call back tomorrow. Like I do not do work outside of those hours. Like I really try to, and it wasn't always like that. Like when I
Yeah,
started, I worked 7 days a week. I worked 12, 13-hour days. It was exhausting, and you got to put in the work to get there. But it's not sustainable long
yeah,
term. Right? And people, as you know, as everybody here listening knows, burnout is really high in this industry. We're passionate people. It's a physical job. It's a mentally taxing job. We're working out in all the elements, right? We can't have a sick day. Dogs have to get taken care of, right? Like I can't. It's a big deal if people can't come in. Like it's not one of those jobs where I'll get to those emails later. It's like we still got to take care of these animals. So to me, it's a demanding job. And I emphasize this with all my staff too, is just, get really, really good at time management and make sure that you're not, you know, working outside of those hours, and you give yourself time. And that's something that over the years I've gotten better about, and making sure that there's a hard line, right? And being okay with saying no, and being okay with saying, I'm sorry, we're out of the office right now. We'll give you a call tomorrow. Unless it's an emergency. Obviously, I know if my staff are calling me, it's something I need to pick up. Otherwise they'd email or message me in our group messenger, right? But outside of emergent situations, I really try to be diligent about putting work away in the evenings and on weekends, right? Where I can have time for myself, my partner, my dogs. I can go ride up at the barn if I want to. I can travel and go see my parents, and not feel like I'm having to constantly check my phone. But at the end of the day, we are business owners. So at the end of the day, if something happens, it's on me. So I do check. I'm available in emergency situations, but my staff is really good, and they're able to kind of hold down the fort, if you will, while I'm gone. And I'm forever grateful for them, so that I don't have to continue to work 14-hour days for the rest of my life. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear that. Like in the beginning, when you're first trying to build something, I think that is a fun time.
yeah.
But yeah, it takes grit and you got to bust your butt. But eventually creating some, some policies and some
Mhm.
boundaries so that you don't lose your mind is fantastic.
Yeah, well, you have to have a personality for it for sure. And like there are really great dog trainers, and I've had some here that used to run their own business, or I've worked with some over the years that had a business. And like, man, I'm done with this, and they want to go work for a company. They don't want to do it anymore, right? Because they lose the love for it because they don't have the passion for the business side, right? And that's really important. Either get a business partner that is good at that, or that should
Mhm.
be a top hire for you early in your career if you can, as soon as you can, is to hire somebody who can take that stuff off your plate so you don't end up losing the love for the work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. And one more fun question.
Mhm.
You've been New Zealand and all over, I assume the US and probably a
I've
bit of
been to Europe
Canada.
and Africa, and some for pleasure, some for work. So
What is one place on your travel bucket list that you haven't been yet?
I would like to spend more time in Central America. I've been to Costa Rica, but there's some other countries. I love the Caribbean, so I've been down there before. But I would say farther wise, like Croatia and Greece are
Mm,
definitely on my list.
yeah,
I
Greece.
like Europe a lot. So yeah, and I actually may have, word is getting out about the New Zealand stuff. So sometimes I get emails about other countries that it's a very unique situation. So they basically it's poodle breeding it's hard as it is. So they don't have a lot of hypoallergenic dogs over there. So mostly the schools have labs and goldens, and so that's how I got work for blind low vision, is that they needed high quality poodles, and it was better to just contract it out per dog because they don't always you're only going to give it to people who need a hypoallergenic dog. So it's very niche, right? So all the dogs that go over there are always standard poodles. So I think word's getting out a little bit that this is now a thing that's available to schools. And so I might end up, partnering with some other European guide dog schools to try to provide them with the poodles. That's very hard for them to have a full breeding program over there for them.
Cool. That
Yeah.
is
So anywhere in
so
Europe, I love Europe, but I also, Central America is great because it's not very far, and the cost of living is very low. It's cheaper to travel there. Europe's obviously pretty expensive, but yeah.
And how can folks reach you maybe first for like pet dog owners who would like to work with Love in the Lead, and then second for, aspiring trainers or trainers that want to get involved in the service work
Yeah,
you're doing?
absolutely. Yeah, we have a lot of opportunities here. We have internships and shadow programs. We have a trainer coming in this fall that's shadowing us for a few months. And so lots of opportunities if whether you think you want to become a trainer or whether you are already a trainer and you want to learn from us or learn whether it's dog training itself or client training or the business side, we do have opportunities like that. I'm actually in the process of working with Canines for Warriors for potentially doing some sort of
Mm,
school, right? Dog training school or something where people can come in on have a more formal curriculum, right? And it would probably be a 6-month program, right? Something a little bit more in depth, but they definitely can just reach out. Info at Love in the Lead is our main kind of email for contacts. And then things get funneled kind of to me directly if need be from my assistant. And then if you're just a client in the area or a person with a dog owner in the area, just jump on our website, schedule a call. We have everything on the website, what our programs are, and we're super good about getting back with people really quickly. And now that we have Leanne's wonderful CRM, it even helps us even more to make sure if we miss a call that those people don't get lost and we can follow up with them. And just scheduling a call or shooting us an email is the best way to kind of make initial contact.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
yeah, we'd love to have you, especially talking maybe more about the team building
Yeah,
and the team
yeah.
stuff that you do.
Talk about the nonprofit a little bit too, because that's a different dynamic
Yeah.
with the team and how that works. So yeah, anytime, just let me know.
Yeah, so much to unpack there because, yeah, you've
A
got
lot.
such a big story already. So good,
Awesome.
great
Well, it was a
stuff.
pleasure talking to you, and I hope you guys have a good day.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, just reach out to loveinthelead.com
Mhm.
or what was the other website?
info@loveandthelead.com is our main company email.
Okay,
So
perfect. And if you need to reach me, it's just automationdogs.com. So thanks everybody for listening and enjoy your day.